Well, welcome everyone. I am super excited to be back with Robert Spiller, and we are going to have another interesting conversation. This time we are talking about show, don't tell. So, without further ado, I am going to hand this over, and we are excited to talk with you and just get this conversation started.
Okay, so if you've been in writing any amount of time, whether it be at the level of teaching writing or if the level of being in critique groups or just being a writer yourself and someone's taken a look at the stuff that you've written or you've taken a look at the stuff that other people have written, you're familiar with show don't tell. In fact, show don't tell has been used so much that it's become almost a cliche. It certainly is one if you're somebody that teaches because I had to teach a class to vets for the longest time, and I tried to teach show don't tell, and it was so unsatisfactory because when I got all done, I didn't. I wanted to be able to tell them what to do, how to show. Just to say, "Oh, you told, and you didn't show, so you're bad," and they're really not. Okay, when a person has told you a story, okay, and they use what people call telling. Okay, it doesn't mean it can't be fixed. And what we're going to do today is we're going to fix, okay, a little piece of literature that I wrote today. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to stop talking about show don't tell. Instead, we're going to use a different phrase. And I think if you use that phrase and you use it with your friends in a critique group, or if you're teaching some people that are younger than yourself in the writing game, I think it's going to help them out more than just give them the old trope of show don't tell. It's called dramatization. It's
Mhm.
sometimes a piece of a scene. Okay, we won't even talk about a whole book, but a scene is under dramatized. If you have a scene that is under dramatized, it lends itself to being called telling. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at three different ones. Now, if you were someone who saw last week's class on evocation, you know that sometimes you can over dramatize too. So I want to show you three different stages of one scene. And it's a pretty mundane scene. It's this person who is walking out of their house onto their porch. They live in Pittsburgh, although you can't tell from the first scene where they live. Okay. And they walk down the steps of their of their porch. They walk across their sidewalk. They walk through a couple parked cars. They walk into the street and they get hit by a car. Okay. And that's pretty much it. And you can tell that in short as many sentences I just said. Okay. But it doesn't really give you any of the flavor of what it's like to be coming out your front door, what was going on in that person's, you know, life at that moment of time, because we're basically taking a snapshot of their life. How much of it we want to see, how much of it we need to see as authors, how much we want to put into that scene so that when it comes out the other side, the person actually feels for the person that got hit by the car or feels good about them getting hit by the car if they didn't like them. Okay. So I built a person that is partially likable and other ways not so likable. Okay. And so consequently, I'm just going to go ahead and show you this, and I invite you to read it along with me. But before we do that, I'm going to talk to my co-conspirator here about some things that she believes are involved in showing and not telling. So last week when we talked about this, we probably didn't keep it in the lesson because we were concentrating on other things. We talked a little bit about showing and not telling. Okay. And we also talked about the possibility that sometimes you just want to tell. Okay. But let's suppose we do come across, and we're going to use these things that her and I come up with right now, and maybe some more, okay, of how we can add dramatization to a scene that already exists rather than saying, oh, this guy's just ruined. The heck with this. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. Okay. Basically, I'm going to start us off here. And first thing is the easiest thing of all. Your characters need names. If they're main characters, please don't don't get caught up in pronouns. I mean, that's the problem is a lot of us feel conversational. and we use pronouns all the time. Okay. And I'm saving a good one for Brandy because Brandy gave me one last week. Okay. Which I've got in my pocket in case she forgot something she said last week. Anyway, the bottom line here is I did not give my character a name in the first seed. And it felt so unsatisfactory that my hand kept twitching as I wanted to put his name in. Okay. And then, of course, once I wanted to put his name in, I had to come up with a name that I liked. Okay. So that's one possibility. Give your guy a name. Do you have something you want to add there?
I think that's so funny, and it made me smile because I have heard you call it a pronoun farm before when you
Yeah.
were looking at a piece of writing, just saying, "Well, you've just got a regular pronoun farm going on here."
Yeah.
Just, you know, he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said, all the way down the page. So that's a really good point. I love that.
Yeah. I think pronouns are not our friends. First of all, I had when I was first starting, a fellow told me, and it's a formula, so feel free, all you people out there, if you don't want to use this formula, don't. But his thing was, in a single paragraph, once you hit your third pronoun, if you don't start off with a proper noun, so you got he, she, blah, blah, you get into your third one, you're almost about to go too far because it seems obvious to when you're writing it. But by the time you get to your third one, it wouldn't be a bad idea to add somehow a tag that lets them know that this is connected with this particular pronoun so that they don't have to do all the heavy lifting. So there's that. Okay. So yeah, I do agree with that. And what you had said last week was sensory uh, sight, hearing, smell, taste. I have trouble working taste in really, usually, especially with somebody just walking down the street, unless they have a creamsicle in their hand. Taste and touch. Okay. And of course, there's balance and there's all the kinds of different things. But what do you think? Is that
Absolutely. I mean, as I'm looking at a piece of writing, if I think it lacks tension or it just doesn't have that wow factor. I mean, 8 out of 10 times it's probably because the author is not incorporating the senses. Like we need
right?
to be in the character's body, looking out through their eyes, feeling everything that they're feeling. And, readers come to fiction because they want to feel and have an experience.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, what I one of the things which I do, which is I have to work on, is we get 80% of our information around the world through our eyes. And what I've noticed in writing, especially with new writers, is over 80% of the sensory information is sight, colors, oh, how someone presents themselves, how tall are they? Okay. But one of the things you just mentioned is to make them feel. Okay. And so if you can add some of those others, because from what I understand, people remember smells actually long after they've forgotten how something looks. Okay. So if you could add that in, okay. I just watched a movie called The Feast of the Seven Fishes, which I cannot recommend enough. Okay. And it's in Pittsburgh, which I've set the scene at, and I've actually used the Feast of the Seven Fishes in it because there's this tradition where the men take over the kitchen and they cook for 24 hours and they cook seven different kinds of fish. Can you just imagine all the sensory information from these people who are talking second generation American Italian, the garlic, the basil, the oregano, all in the air. Okay. The just the different sights and sounds that you're hearing in the room, male versus female. There was a grandmother in her that was just a harpy. She was so mean to everybody. Kept telling him that his fish tasted bad and he worked so hard on it, the father. And then, of course, the feeling is some of these people love one another. And some of them not only love one another, but they also have been together a long time. And so they are of a type of friendly that you can only get when you've been with someone for 35 years.
Mhm.
Like, this is my best friend ever. Okay. And that feeling, boy, if you can get that across. Okay. Because a lot of us don't have a best friend. Okay. I took a long time not having a best friend that was a male. And consequently, I went into therapy over it. Said, hey, how come I don't have any male friends? And they said, well, here's some reasons, and here's some things you should do. And once I got that, I wanted to put that in my writing. I wanted to know what's it feel like? Because little kids make friends easy, but as an adult, it's harder. And I think if you have a best friend as an adult, it just feels good. So there's another feeling. Anyway, I'm gonna well, hold it. Before we go any further, let's talk about possible other things. One of the things I try to do sometimes doing a when trying to put in some stuff to dramatize it is put a little backstory in. Okay. Why is a person doing a particular thing? A single sentence is usually enough. You don't have to tell a whole story. Okay. You could just say, hey, I I I I get nervous when I get to a street corner. And the reason why, and I still do, I was standing at a street corner when two cars hit each other at 40 miles an hour, just rammed. I don't even know how is it that they did that? I mean, surely they were looking out their front windshield and they were obviously hurt. I couldn't stay there that long because I was fostering a bad cold. Somebody came along and grabbed my arm and told me to get back in the house because it was a freezing day and I was wearing hardly any clothing and I was a little delirious. And so consequently, and I thought later when I saw it, I said, an accident happened on the corner of yada and yada. I said, well, yeah. And I went, oh, okay. Well, anyway, the bottom line is that was embedded in my head. And consequently, I thought if I ever am at a corner and I feel that way and my character feels that way, I'm going to give them this particular story. I'm going to tell them, hey, this is why things happen. Okay, instead of going on anymore, unless you have something you want to say, add it to, we'll add as we take a look at this one piece, which I think is severely under dramatized. So here we go. Okay. Now, this is something that is under dramatized. And as you can see, first of all, it's darn short. He shut the door behind him and stepped out onto the porch. When he reached the bottom of the porch steps, he looked both ways up and down his block before stepping out into the street. From out of nowhere, a truck clipped him, sending him reeling. This has got so many bad things about it that I didn't like it. I had to work hard to put them in there. The worst thing about it, I think, is the last word. Okay. What does a person look like when they're reeling? Okay. And also, when you get hit, I don't think you reel as much as you get slammed. Okay. So, first thing you're going to do when you want to dramatize something is your verbs got to go up in excitement. Okay. And so, consequently, reeling doesn't just do it for me. I know it's not a true verb, and so forgive me for that. But anyway, there's so many things here, okay, that I think could be fixed. We're going to talk about them, and then I'm going to do my darndest for the next thing you look at to fix them. Okay, and I'm going to allow my companion here to also uh, come in and just take an axe to this guy and see, hey, I didn't like this, I didn't like this. Anyway, he shut the door behind him. I don't get a feeling about that. Did he pull it closed Did he pull it closed quietly to make sure that no one knew he was leaving? Did he slam it? Okay. What was he leaving behind him? Why was he leaving? Okay. Did he just step out onto the porch or was there more to it? What's the porch look like? Okay. There's all that just in the first sentence that I might not fix them all in the first sentence, but I'd certainly try to fix some of them. Okay. When he reached the bottom of the porch steps, we don't spend any time on that porch at all. We don't. So we really got all the way past that porch and we don't know a thing about that porch. This is the place where our protagonist lives and we know nothing about it. And now we're away from his house. He looked both ways up and down his block. Why? Why did he look both ways up and down his block? Okay, before stepping out in the street. Okay, what's the name of the street? Okay, what's the street look like? Is it got parked cars on both sides? Is it a wide street? Is it a narrow street? I grew up on a narrow street. People parked anyway, and so it did not leave room for cars to go up and down the street, even though the street was a two-way street. We have those in Colorado Springs. I think it's just dumb. Okay, anyway, from out of nowhere, a truck. What kind of truck? What color truck? How big a truck? Okay, clipped him. What's that even mean? If you could clip, where did it clip him? Okay. How did it feel to be clipped? Okay. How badly is this person hurt? I think getting hit by a truck probably hurts quite a bit. Okay. Sending him reeling, and you already know how I feel about reeling. Reeling is it's just unsatisfactory. So here it is. There's a lot going on here, and I think this guy deserves if somebody comes along and told me that I told and didn't show. Because there's so many things I could have showed. And so I'm going to say that this is under dramatized. Okay. Do you have any feelings about this, Brandy?
Right, I would agree with you, and there's just so much missed opportunity. That's what I
Oh,
would say.
what a good way to
Yeah,
put it.
it's missed opportunity. There's so much we can explore here. When we're first looking at the door, you can show if the family is of the higher class or the lower class. As you're looking at the street, you can do the same thing. And there's no people here, so you can show something odd about the street to increase the suspense. You can use foreshadowing on the street by showing a mailbox, the old time mailbox with three legs instead of four. You're that can be, just like the smoking gun that we want to know, why is the mailbox like that? You can, what time of year is it? I'm with you.
Oh,
And
yeah. What
yeah,
time of year
what
is it?
what
Is
time
it,
of year?
yeah, is it cold or is it hot?
We're gonna do other things depending on that. And
Yes. We're
is
going to
there
dress in different clothes depending on that.
Or is there a bakery down the street and can we smell the bread? Like what's
Yes.
going on here? And does the door shut? Is it a thud because it's from a mansion and it's a carved mahogany door, or is it kind of off the hinges and we have a blaring TV coming from inside and someone cursing us out? What's going on here? I mean, there's just so much that we can dive into. Are the porch steps wooden? Do they creak? Are they stone? Are they chipped? Let's see. And then the
I
truck.
know.
Obviously, the truck. I mean, what kind of truck is it? What are we
Yes.
dealing with here?
And a big truck could really hurt you.
Exactly. And then
Just like
mostly,
the lawyers are saying in Colorado Springs all the time, these guys will really hurt
yeah.
you.
And then the sounds. Where are the sounds? I mean, this
Yeah.
truck is going to come, screaming down the street. We're going to hear the rubber. We're going to just hear so many things. If there's people on the street, they're going to be screaming. And then the amount of pain by being, clipped by a truck is
Yes,
pretty intense. So, yes.
I agree.
And then sending him reeling, you could spend a beautiful paragraph about what does it feel like to be hit by a truck?
Indeed.
What kind of shock are you in? What's going through your mind, if nothing? So much wasted opportunity. That's what I would say.
I think you're right. And plus, I would add one more thing. You could add some inner dialogue so you could during this short thing that is happening to him, you could find out things about him.
Mhm.
You could find out, is he angry? Is he sad? Did you just have a fight with somebody and which is the reason why he's leaving? Or is he sad because they made him leave? Okay. What sort of things is he thinking? Could he be talking to himself here as he's coming out his front door and saying things that are mad about the person that's still inside the house, if there is a person that's still inside the house? Okay.
In
Just
my mind, there was. In my mind, there was.
in my mind there was too, because
Yes.
darn doggone it, there really is.
Yes.
Okay, because I wrote the darn thing. Okay, so we're going to leave here for now, and we're going to see how many of those things I did right. But there's one thing you need to be aware of. You can go too far. Now, that is in the eye of the beholder. Okay, sometimes some people go too far in my mind. Sometimes Stephen King goes too far, and trust me, I am a big Stephen King fan. Not all of them. I do not like him when you deal with just horribly cruel and sadistic people. But 11/22/63 is a nice person trying to do the best he can to save the world from the worst thing he could think of, which is the Kennedy assassination. He's taking years of his life to try to fix that, and that's a wonderful book. Yet even in that book, sometimes Stephen King lingers too long because he loves words and I love words too. Okay, and other folks wouldn't agree with me. Insomnia is one of those books. And that's about a guy that has insomnia so bad that he starts seeing visions which turn out to be true. Anyway, another one that seems to have a lot of stuff going on that I find to be just oh, just so many words. It's Game of Thrones, and there's certain people I can't even say this around, or they would throw rocks at my head because they love Game of Thrones so much. But George R. Martin spends a lot of time saying a lot of stuff. Okay. And so you'll have to decide, did I say too much? And then once you decide I said too much, you should wait to see what happens when I go out of my way to say too much. Okay, so I'm going to
I am
what do you
excited
feel?
about this. I'm excited to see what you did.
We're going to go to what I consider to be appropriate amount of dramatization. Brandy may disagree with me because she's never seen this piece of text before. She may think it's still under dramatized, and or she may think it's over. Okay, we're going to linger over this one guy a bit of time before we go over to the one that I think I over dramatized. And then there's one thing I think that none of us do, which I'm going to recommend you do once in your life as a writer, just to show yourself you can do it so that you never do it when you're really doing something you care about. So this is the same scene. What's going to happen is the same guy is going to walk out his front door. Okay. And he's going to do the same actions, except as you can see, in order to make him have some sort of lively feel to it, like you would like, I've added a bit of much. And I'm really anxious to see what Brandy has to say with regard to did I do enough? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this with you. Feel free to read it along with me. Jimmy slammed the front door behind him. The smells, mostly garlic and basil, dissipated in the chilly winter air. Woman, he whispered through his teeth, one of these days I'm going to walk out this door and never come back. Seeing Willie's Jeep parked in the street, he tapped the pocket of his pea jacket and sighed. Not likely, you old fool, he thought. Who else besides Rachel would remind you to bring along your damn car keys and wallet? Well, he can't go right back in now and get them. That woman would never let me leave it down. As he stepped out onto the porch, he looked east at the Allegheny River at the end of Simeon Avenue. The majesty of that panorama still calmed him, even after 50 years of living in Pittsburgh. He might as well head on down to the Dewdrop Inn and have a beer and a bump with a few of the boys. Let me stop right here at this point in time. And I don't know how Brandy feels about this, but I wrote this in here the way I did because to me, it feels like it needed an extra uh, click or something between the majesty and he might as well head down. There was no segue that happened between this, so this felt abrupt. Okay. So I dramatized it, but I probably could have put some drama right in this space right there, and I didn't. So just keep that in mind, okay, when we get into the one that's over dramatized. As he stepped back out onto the porch, he looked east. Okay, are you kidding me? Now it's got two of those lines. Oh, this is just
It's
sad.
okay. Just keep going. It's
Okay,
fine.
when he reached the bottom of the porch on Simeon before stepping out onto the street, he maybe should have looked a second time. Before it clipped him on the hip, I still use clipped. James caught a glimpse of Harvey Fastorelli's Ford Mustang. He spun completely around and slammed into his own Willys. Okay. I'm anxious to see because now that I read this again, I probably could have dramatized this just a little bit more. There may be a few more opportunities, as Brandy is fond of saying, because I see them myself now.
Mhm.
But what I'm hoping all you people watching this is you see them. You see places where you might have actually put something in. Okay. What is he thinking? Should I change the word clipped? How does it feel to be hit by a car? What happens in that instant? Does it like lightning? Does something happen is it flash? Okay, so I'm thinking there's might even still be some opportunities that are missed here. This has been dramatized more, though, obviously, as you can see. We know the guy's name. We've added some thoughts. We've added some things he's saying to himself. Okay, we know that he's old. What we don't know was what he and his house look like. We do know how it's cold. It's wintertime. It's chilly. Okay. We know the type of car that hit him. We know the street that he lives on. Okay. What we don't know, and we do know that he slammed the door and that he's mad at his wife and that there are smells of garlic and basil coming out. So we've dramatized it somewhat. The question is, can we dramatize it some more without dramatizing it too much? And so I'm turning the stage over to my companion. Let's see what she has to say.
Well, because I know what you're capable of, I would definitely say this needs to be spillered on up.
It probably does. It probably
Yeah.
does. Okay, and I'm wondering when we finally get to the one that I called over dramatized, maybe that's the one which we should keep. But we're going to talk about that because last week we talked about putting too much stuff in. Okay, and I'm going to save what I have to say about that till we get to the second one. Putting too much stuff in and not allowing the person who is reading the thing to have an evocation where they say, "Oh yeah, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to smell garlic and basil because I grew up in an Italian household. My parents would have pasta every Sunday night, and I knew that, and it would bring back not just the fact that their smells, mostly garlic and basil, but what they smelled. Okay, so I'm a little concerned about putting too much stuff in, but the truth of the matter is, I believe perhaps I could even dramatize this more. Okay, and I don't want to rush through this. Anything more you think we should talk about it before we
Well,
move on?
especially when you just mentioned the Allegheny River and, the characters looking right at the Allegheny River, I thought, what does the Allegheny River look like? There was so much missed opportunity there for me as far as what we can do with the setting, what we can do with the atmosphere. Last night I was talking about putting our characters' emotion into the setting and the atmosphere. So the way that the Allegheny River is flowing or reflecting or fog. I mean, we can do so much here.
We
So,
could.
so definitely.
We
And
could.
then,
You've
and then,
always been really
yeah,
good with setting. All of your books are full of it.
thank
And
you.
okay, I think, and also, of course, I took that class of yours on setting, and I try to use some of it every time I write because you use setting as a foreshadowing of what's to come, a rainy versus sunny, okay, foggy, all those different things. Just like Sherlock Holmes does sometimes in his things, where it's foggy and you know that there's danger involved because you can't see something's coming. Okay, and you talked about that in your class. So yeah, and so you may because I did some stuff with the Allegheny River, but I certainly didn't do what you just said. Okay, what's interesting then is people are going to be able to look at a particular piece of writing and they're going to say, I would have done more. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we want to do, okay, is make them feel like, hey, yeah, you're a writer as well. If you would have done more, then you do it more when you do your own writing, because here you found something in somebody whose book you're actually reading and you could do better. And I'm sure both of us have found that we're reading a book and we go, I can do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
I could actually I would have not lost that opportunity right there. Okay. And so consequently, in this particular case, we might still be under dramatized. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, do you think any part of this was over dramatized?
Oh, not at this point. I wouldn't be pegging it as that. I would still say under. I mean, especially another phrase that jumped out at me was the majesty of that panorama. I'm not feeling the majesty of that panorama. So I
That
would,
was certainly telling.
yeah, I would really go in
You would
on,
lean heavily into it,
I
and
would,
I wish
I
I
would
could
lean
tell you I
hard.
did better than the second. Okay, but we'll talk about that some more, and hopefully between the two of us, we'll help somebody else to do better.
Yeah.
Okay, I do now know how to get out of here. Boom. Okay,
Boom.
boom. All right, so now, dear person who's doing this along with us, we have looked at something that was severely undramatized. we didn't have any names, severely under dramatized. We saw something that I thought when I wrote it was dramatized, that only immediately did I see and went, oh crap, that's not. Mainly because I'm sitting with a good author, and I was immediately said, what would Brandy think? And then I thought, you know what? I wish I would have thought that of that too. Okay, so basically, what we're going to do now is we're going to go to a thing which I called over dramatized, and you may disagree, and it's always in the eye of the beholder. Okay, just like I was telling you about Stephen King and J.R. Uh, uh, oh, somebody Martin who wrote the Game of Thrones.
George
And
R. R. Martin.
R.R. Martin. Okay, who, by the way, is one of my favorite authors. I've his one of his short stories is my simply called Song for Leah is my favorite short story in the whole world. Okay, so here we have it. And as you can see, this is 2.5 pages long. Okay, so once again, I'm inviting you to read along with me. Jimmy slammed the front door behind him. If it were only that easy. He grabbed a hold of the lion's head brass doorknob and did the manly thing. He braced his heel against the threshold and gave the damn knob a yank that sent a shockwave of pain through his right shoulder. Only then did the door properly latch shut. And only then did the kitchen smells, mostly garlic and basil, start to dissipate in the chilly winter air. He rubbed some life back into his shoulder. Woman, he whispered through his teeth, one of these days I'm going to walk out this door and never come back. Seeing his Willie's Jeep parked in the street, he tapped the pocket of his pea jacket and sighed. Not likely, you old fool, he thought. Who else besides Rachel would remind you to bring along your damn car keys? So what I did with this one, people, is I did this on purpose. Okay. I simply took the skeleton of the previous one and I dramatized into it, which is something you can always do. You don't have to scrap the thing you're writing. Okay, you can do it and do it and do it, and it's perfectly possible to overdo it. Okay, but you can sort of put stuff into it. It's not as easy because what is easier is to put too much stuff in right away and then to take it back out again. Okay, and that, of course, is what we're going to talk about as we get to the end of this. Well, I can't go back. I can't back. Oh, I left out the word go. Oh, poop. I can't go back in now and get them. That woman would never let me live it down. As he stepped out on the porch, which he noticed could use a fresh coat of Kelly green paint. He stared down Simeon he stared down the Simeon Allen. Oh gosh. He stared down the Simeon Avenue Hill to the Allegheny River, and he immediately disappointed Brandy because he didn't do anything with the darn river. The majesty of that panorama still calmed him after 50 years of living in Pittsburgh. When he and Rachel had bought this house some 40 odd years ago, they often stood holding hands on this very spot. Sometimes they kissed, and sometimes after kissing, they would both think whatever errand they were on could just wait, and she would take his hand and lead him back into the house. Again with a sigh, and now maybe with a bit of guilt. The Feast of Seven Fishes, the source of the garlic and basil aromas, was something Rachel shouldn't be working on alone. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work for two. A less than friendly voice popped up in his frontal robes. Do her good if you stayed away for a while. Maybe she wouldn't rag so much. Yeah, I could head on down to the Dewdrop Inn. This time I changed that, as you can see, to something he said out loud because I don't want you to like him at the moment. I could head on down to the Dewdrop Inn and have a beer and a bump with a few of the boys. Wouldn't have to stay that long. So hopefully he's thinking about her. When he reached the bottom of the porch steps, he looked both right and left on Simeon before stepping out into the street. He made a habit of this after old man Anatoly got himself killed down by the river. Damn milk truck. Shot him right into the Allegheny. And on the Feast of the Seven Fishes, no less. Jimmy himself should have looked a second time. Just before I clipped him on the hip, I didn't change this too much. On the same damn hip he had replaced last summer, Jimmy caught a glimpse of Harvey Fastorelli's Ford Mustang, Ford cherry red Ford Mustang. So consequently, here's what I thought. you could possibly try as an exercise. How many possible adjectives can you add to that Mustang before you think this is just ludicrous? Okay, I thought of about 11 more I could add onto it. Okay. Uh the what's the antenna look like? Is there a ball on top of the antenna like a skull? Okay. Uh could it possibly not be a cherry red because they are in Pittsburgh? Could it be black and gold like the Pittsburgh Steelers? And if it does have a Pittsburgh Steelers, could it have the Pittsburgh Steelers emblem on the side of the car? Okay. All kinds of stuff about this Ford Mustang. Could you just put it, okay, all the possibilities of the things you've already learned about Harvey, could you put them all, or about the, well, not necessarily about Harvey, but about the town he's living in and the milieu of where this particular thing is taking place, and put them into this Mustang and just make it ridiculous. Because once again, we're trying in this particular case to over dramatize. Spun completely around and slammed into his own Willys Jeep. I just added the word Jeep here because a lot of folks, when it got to the end, probably might have forgotten what a Willys is. And of course, a Willys does have double meaning. Okay, so here we are. We've added a whole bunch more stuff. He's had a hip replacement last summer. I thought though this was a bit much. So let me just uh I I wanted to know what you thought, Brandy. I put something in here which I thought was he stepped out on the porch, which he noticed, if it doesn't have an it, shouldn't have an it, which he noticed could use a fresh coat of Kelly green paint. I thought, well, that's a bit much because I don't think you can get away with that because anybody reading, and I think this person who's reading their first book, if they read that, would go, that is awkward. Okay, so hopefully we both agree that if I'm going to tell that this used to be a Kelly green porch, I need to do it in a different way. Isn't a bad idea to let the reader know that this is Kelly Green porch. In fact, it might not be a bad idea to know what else is on the porch. Is there a porch swing? Okay. Uh, but I think that's a bit overkill right there, which he noticed could use a fresh coat of Kelly Green paint. Okay. Anyway, so we have obviously made it longer. We have added this whole scene from his past, which is one way you can always dramatize. Bring something back in that he remembers. And old people have memories like this, especially if they're really, really good friends still with their spouse. They'll remember and feel, because once you're friends with somebody for that long and you feel good about them for that long, you realize they're the best friend you've ever had in your life. And you're so lucky to have them in your life. And so consequently, you'll remember things like this and not just things like this. I remember things from when I was young that when Barbara would come in and jump up. She had been up for me ahead of me and would jump on the bed to wake me up. And she would tell me all the things that she had been thinking about since she got up. And she'd already done her stretching and she'd already done her marching and she'd already done all her stuff in the morning. Anyway, the bottom line is, I hope this would evoke something in someone who is older. Anyway, so I did dramatize this, and I think what the deal of it is I hope there are some things that are over dramatized because I called it cleverly enough. I didn't call it here, but it is named on my file. Over dramatized a scene that is over dramatized. Now, could more have been done? I think probably Brandy would agree because once we get to the get to the Allegheny, she might want me to possibly do something right in here. The majesty of the panorama still calmed him after 50 years. That is definitely telling. So I could probably replace that with a sentence or two to talk about what he actually sees and what goes inside him as he's um staring at the alligator. How close is he? Because if he's just seeing a blue line in the horizon, I did have it. I've lived up the street from rivers, and in my experience of all the cities I've ever been in, it's always downhill to a river. Well, obviously it should be. If it's uphill to a river, why isn't the river spilling down on you? Okay, so it's always downhill to a river. So this time I put in what I was thinking that it is down. down Simeon Hill on Simeon Avenue, where at the bottom of this hill, right by the river, old man Anatola was hit by a milk truck, damn it. Okay, and he got shot right into the river, which I suppose could happen. I don't know the actual layout of what it's like along every stretch of the Allegheny River. I do know the Allegheny River, though, runs smack dab into Pittsburgh. Allegheny is one of three rivers that run into, wait for it, Three River Stadium. Okay, including the Ohio and oh God, I'm about to make one up. The Monongahela. Anyway. A third river, damn it. Anyway. Anyway, so I'm not going to keep talking because I wrote this and now I'm already seeing some faults in it. Of course, I left out a word or two. I thought I had edited the living daylights out of it, only to find out I left out an up above, which made it sound clunky when I was reading it. Anyway, thoughts. Brandy Vallance, master writer.
Well, I so appreciate that you have done this. This is so wonderful just to see this and go step by step. So thank you. And yes, I would agree that it is in parts over-explained and over-dramatized, but we have some great solutions for it. And so I noticed some filter words. And one of the things that I was going to talk about when you are trying not to tell and show instead is you really want to go in on deep POV, and deep POV will certainly help you. If you avoid the filter words of things like felt, saw, heard, noticed, and just talk about what your character is feeling, saw, hearing, and noticing, that is definitely a way that you can be showing instead of telling. Let's see, what else did I write here? Some of it could be condensed, and we could just dole that out to get to the quicker action of him actually getting hit by the truck.
Right. And then what might also decide how much of this you would keep is what is it the author is trying to accomplish? Is the actual being hit by the car the thing which was important that we're trying to get to? Okay, because what happens after that may decide whether or not we need to keep some of this stuff about how he had to slam the door to get it to be shut. Okay, whether or not we have to talk about the Feast of the Seven Fishes, which, by the way, is a big deal. Look, I at one time knew what all seven fishes were. They're different fishes. Anyway, all of that. So if what we want to talk about is this thing right here being hit by Harvey Fastorelli. Did Harvey Fastorelli do that on purpose? Okay. Or uh does his wife come out and he's really badly hurt? And from then on, we have something happen down here about that. Okay, do the police show up? Is he not really all that badly hurt, but now he's really mad at Harvey Fastorelli? Okay, the bottom line is this thing here begs the question of how much do you really see in the split second while you're being hit? Okay, I thought about that, but I do certainly agree with you on the filter. I catch those on people all the time and then turn right around and use them. And I think I used all of them. I used noticed, I used felt, I used seemed. Okay, I in my defense, I wrote this for this purpose. Okay, so we would have something to talk about. So I could say, "Oh, I wrote those guys in so Bart Brandy would catch those," but that's a lie.
Well, I'm seeing omniscient where there is no omniscience, so something's going on.
Okay, so something weird just happened. I lost the thing that allows me to stop sharing. I,
Okay.
so you're going to have to do it.
Okay. There we go. One thing
Okay.
that I did want to mention, one thing is that something you were very good at is taking a scene and actually writing what actually happens in this scene. Because many times writers get lost in the woods of that. And they're just, meandering along. And you were the one of the first people who pointed that out to me. Just write what actually happens in this scene. And then
Thank
what do
you.
I want to happen in this scene?
Yeah, some of my favorite writers do that very well. Uh, but I've also read stuff where people get lost in the weeds. Yeah. Uh, and I tell you the truth, to be honest, I sometimes don't make it through the weeds with them. It's just a good spot, especially if I'm tired at night and I've got the book in my hand and I'm sitting up in bed with a pillow behind me and on my back is starting to get a little uncomfortable. I might go, "Oh, dude, you're taking too long here." Uh, just a thing that's just like that, and you might want to edit this out later. I am on the verge of having diabetes, and I'm working really hard not to have it. So I watch a lot of videos about diabetes. I probably watched 35 of them in the last 3 weeks. They take forever to tell me what they say they're going to tell me about this video. Like 7 foods to get rid of diabetes. Well, I'm ready. You can tell me the 7 foods now. They go on and on. And sometimes I just look at them and go, man, you're still talking nonsense. Okay. And then they get all the way to their back. But before we tell you about the 7 foods, would you please subscribe and I go, not on your life now, dude, because you talk too much. Anyway, so I agree with you about that. And I think that's something that happens. And don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, this Martin guy who writes Game of Thrones is a great writer because he has got one of the most popular miniseries in the history of miniseries. And there are millions of people that read his books. I just find him to be a little bit wordy and very much wanting to describe and describe and describe and describe. But it's once again in the eye of the beholder, because truth be told, what one man's mead is another man's Persian. Okay. The bottom line is a, a lot of folks just like that sort of thing. So I guess what you could do is take some of the advice which we have here and write your scene. Okay. Don't worry about over dramatizing it. Go crazy. Go nuts. Because well, you know what you could do then? You can edit back. Once you figure out where your scene is heading, or you may already know, once you figure out though the sentences that come after the scene that you think you might have over dramatized, you can go back and remove stuff very easily. Removing stuff is easier than you think. Okay. You cut something out and it closes back in on your word processor, and you're looking at that sentence and you're going, well, that sentence reads perfectly okay. I don't even miss those words I took out. Okay. So what I would recommend is you take a scene and you put in the drama it takes. And we've talked about a number of ways to do that. One is to put in a little back history, like I did with him when his wife, first moved to this house and were looking down at the Allegheny River, setting like Brandy has. Okay, and I'm stepping on her toes here because she is the queen of setting. In fact, her atmosphere and her stuff is something that I'm still learning, and I am old and I'm still learning it from her because she's so good at it. Okay. Please name your characters if they mean anything to you at all, and do not do pronoun farms. Okay. I know it's the way we all talk. I probably used a million pronouns talking to you. In fact, I've used the word you so much, but try not to do that to your reader because they have to keep track of all those pronouns, and sometimes it's hard. And if they do lose track of it, it's well, it's nobody's fault but yours because they do the best they can. They didn't come to the book with the idea of getting confused. They're not stupid. Okay, they're as smart as they've ever been. And they're reading your book and they want to be entertained and they also want to learn something from you. Okay. And so consequently, I'm going to let Brandy talk.
I do have a few thoughts. I was just going to add that something that's coming up in the manuscripts that I am evaluating a lot is that authors will have their characters in a very scary situation. And they will say that their character is scared without earning it. you know? I'm not fear
Oh,
I'm not feeling scared. Or something else that I see a lot is that the character wants to vomit because they're seeing something very gross, but I need to feel like I need to vomit because
I couldn't agree
it
more.
is so horrendous and disgusting that I too need to run and vomit at this very moment. So,
Yes,
yeah, so um yeah, and that's all about the emotion. It's just, don't say that the moon is shining. I can't believe we didn't quote this. Chekhov's famous quote. Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass. So,
that is beautiful.
yeah, that's my favorite quote about show don't tell. So,
Well, it's a really good quote.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were going to head to the ocean, which is one of my favorite things, to see the moon at night, just as the moon comes up over the ocean and see part of it reflected back into the ripple of the ocean.
Mm.
Okay.
Well, I want to see that.
Chekhov said it better. I mean, glint on
Yeah.
broken glass. I mean, gee willikers.
Yeah, why is the glass broken? It's at night. What's going on? Are we dealing with a monster? Are we dealing with a murderer? Are we dealing with an angry husband or an angry wife? What's happening here? So
Uh-huh.
and that's mainly what you want to do is you want to give your reader so many questions that they are so invested that they have to turn the page and they can't close the book.
I I've taught that. I've taught that to my people that it's called profluence. Okay, and I took a class. Well, it's inside a bunch of other classes, but a class in profluence, and even books that aren't plotted, like Miss Dalloway or Ulysses, which are basically just stream of consciousness. They have profluence that you want to turn the page. There's nothing more important than that. In fact, what I really liked as I was writing early on when I had books like Crazy out was letters that I would get, emails mostly. I never got any mails because nobody knew my address, telling me how mad they were at me because they had a 6 o'clock pro 6 o'clock thing that they had to present at work, and they were up till 3 o'clock reading my book, and they hated me. And I went, "You're welcome."
Mhm. That is 100% what we want, and that is the goal. The goal is to give your readers an immersive experience. So definitely be focusing on how can I immerse this person into every emotion and beat of the story. And don't waste anything. If if you're dealing with food, eat the food. Okay? If you're dealing with music, listen to the music. If you have a perfume or a cologne, buy it. Sit with it. Sit with it for 20 minutes and put it on your arm and smell it and then describe that. Give your reader an immersive experience, and then you will sell a lot of books, most likely, have a lot of really devoted fans, and you will do your thing because you have made your readers feel. And that is the entire point.
I agree. Yeah, and it feels good when they tell you that. I
Mhm.
don't know, even Stephen King doesn't feel good when they get, I don't know if emails reach them anymore, but in my imagination, some of them get through and they read one and they go, "Look at this, Tabitha." That's Stephen King's wife. "Look at this." And she goes, "Well, isn't that nice, Stephen?" Okay. And so, yeah,
It
it's always nice to hear from a reader and they tell you those things. And that's the biggie. I could not put your book down.
it
Okay.
makes it all worth it too. I've had people tell me this was my favorite book of the entire year. And often I'll be having a really bad day, and that makes it all worth it. It makes you want to go back
Yeah.
and sit in your chair for another 570 million hours and,
Yeah.
work
Right.
on your craft and
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah. It is worth and when you do that and you feel like you've done a good job and then it goes off into the world and then somebody actually gets a chance to read it and then tells you so. You
Mm.
look all the way back to when you first put the first words on the first page and the job that you did to make it all the way to there. That's Herculean. Yeah, that word. Okay. And what it boils down to is, okay, a lot of folks want to do that. And I guess I'm talking now to the folks who are listening here. You are one of those people. You're one of those people who are on that journey. Okay. Whether you're young or old, keep in mind, Grandma Moses started painting when she was 80. All right. What it boils down to, and Georgia O'Keeffe, who is my absolute favorite painter in the whole world, painted about 100 paintings after as she was going blind. Okay, so it's doable. Okay, the only thing that I don't like to hear is, well, I could write a book. Well, damn it, do it. Since
Mm.
you're somebody who would like to write a book, I encourage you to do so. And hopefully this particular lesson will help you do so. And I'm glad to have worked with Brandy because she is a complete delight.
Well,
Okay.
you are too. And
Thank
I
you.
and I will end with a joke. Since you're the guy always telling the joke, I'll tell you a joke. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
So writing a novel is like telling a joke and waiting for 5 years to see if it's funny.
Oh,
It's not really a joke. We need to
no.
go cry now.
Okay, so people, here are some things to look forward to with these guys. We will be doing one next week. We will try. I have one that I'm going to do that's just me sounding off about something that I've noticed, and it's not the fault of writers so much as unfortunately we are the unfortunate recipients. This is a world of Marvel and of Harry Potter and of uh DC Comics and of Game of Thrones. This is a world where those things happen. And then something happens in this mundane world to an ordinary person, a rabbi, a school teacher, a housewife who has just done 8 loads of laundry. Okay. Something very startling. How do we react when in the movies we don't even flinch a muscle when we see a person fly? Most of the people in the Avengers can fly, and we don't even think twice about it. But we don't have any flying people outside my window right now. Okay, so I want to talk about that and what the reaction can be. And it can be several, and there are several legitimate reactions. Another thing which we're going to talk about in the weeks to come is I'd like to talk about how do you introduce your main character over time. But a couple more things. I don't know if you'd like to be in a critique group, but I would like to give you some pointers on how to form one because I can't say it enough. Most of us can't afford a professional editor, but most of us have friends. And most of us know writing organizations, which will help us find writing friends. So those are 3 classes, and I think there'll be more because this is fun as hell to do. Okay,
It is
so
so much fun.
yes. So
I just
I
love
don't have
hanging out
anything
with
more to
you.
say, and I thank you for hanging with me all this time and with my good friend.
Yes, thank you so much for being here.